All right, I believe we are live. Welcome, friends. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Will someone give me a little message and let me know if you can hear me okay, just to make sure I have the the kinks worked out of this OBS. Emphasis on the BS, maybe. BS when I'm doing it, because I don't know what I'm doing. But I hope everyone's having a great day today. Happy Monday. Back at it, we can hear. Heck yeah, Drew and Dragons is in the house. Dirty Socks in the house. Garrick is in the house. How's it going, everyone? Happy to see Mr. Vincent is here. Wrecking the Brew. Heck yeah. Wrecking the Brew already today. I like it. Robert H is here. How's it going, Robert? Whispering Wisp. Howdy. How's it going, Whispering Wisp? All right. Who else we got? Man, I'm so happy to see everyone. I'm so happy to be alive. I thought I was a goner. I thought I might be gone. I thought I might be as dead as I was afraid Grom was going to be last week. Iskandar the Great made it. Heck yeah. Robert Evans, Superfly Rob in the house. I do feel better. Yesterday at about noon, I was still feeling a little weird. My oldest son called me and wanted to meet for lunch. And I said, man, I don't know. Are you sure that you want to risk this? I might give you what I have. And he said, I don't care. I want to get together for lunch. And so I said, all right. And so him and his younger sister met me for lunch and we had awesome time. We had tacos and then we went out for boba tea. I like to get me a coconut milk boba tea. Very delicious. So yeah, it was great. And I started feeling better. I got home. I did a little work, ran the dogs around a little bit. And then I ended up cleaning my room a little bit. All you Jordan Peterson fans will appreciate that. And then I jumped in William's game. I was happy to be able to make it to Dungeons and 20s game, which leaves a big question unanswered. Is Grom Izek still alive, or did he perish? He was at death's door in the last episode, and I will tell you the story here in just a moment after I catch up on a couple more of these comments. Ours Ark is in the house. How's it going, Ours Ark? Sketchosaurus Rex, good to see you, Sketchosaurus. I'm feeling better now. Dave's Imaginations. First time, Dave, welcome. Welcome to the stream. I'm so happy to see everyone. Okay, so first order of business. I want you to drop what you'd like to talk about in the comments. I'm not even looking at Discord right now. Discord is so backed up. I have so many important things to do that I've just shut the window. And I'm not going to worry about it until later because here's how it goes. Here's how my workday goes. YouTube first, email second, Discord third. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. I'm about halfway through editing tomorrow morning's video episode. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at today. So we can only do what we can do. Drew and Dragon says, got an immovable great axe last night. What shenanigans can my paladin get into with an immovable rod baked into a great axe? He's going to obviously stab it into an enemy and then make it immovable so the enemy can't move. If he stabs it into him while he's on the ground, he'll be pinned. That's what I would do. He's a shield wielder, but strap that thing to his back so fast. Absolutely. Immovable rods are such an amazing thing. They're such an amazing piece of machinery. I wish I had one in real life. If I had one in real life, I would find a way to abuse it. Sketchosaurus Rex says, should you have unambiguous evil monsters like orcs and goblins? Ooh. Sketchosaurus Rex, are you asking this like from the perspective of, well, obviously orcs and goblins are unambiguously evil? Or are you asking this from the perspective of, should orcs and goblins be unambiguously evil? Which level of that are you wanting to talk about? Because both of those are actually separate questions, I feel like. Whispering Wisp says clothesline shenanigans. Yes, absolutely. It's kind of like Thor's hammer. The immovable rod can function very similarly to Thor's hammer, just without the kapow that comes when you smack enemies in the face. Because Thor has godlike power and godlike good looks. Okay, so first order of business, Grom. Here's what happened with Grom last night. Grom was surrounded by wizards, getting the payback he kind of deserved for basically getting into a smack talking contest and a pissing contest with the leader of the local wizards conclave. Grom Izak is a vindictive bastard. He is an evil minotaur, and he is not a nice dude. And he kind of deserved it. These wizards got together. He tried to persuade them out of it. That's his best skills, persuasion or deception. And he ended up failing at that. He gave it a real mighty effort. He basically talked all of them but one into backing off. But that one was not having it. And that one orc wizard zapped him with a lightning bolt, and then he tried to suggest that wizard made the save, and then that wizard hit him with an arcane blast, I think it was, and it killed Grom. Grom had 27 hit points. Grom was a dead minotaur. So he was laying on the steps, bleeding out. I rolled one death saving throw, failed it. Rolled a nat 1 for the second one, dead. Literally went to hell. Actually, I've got to give a shout out to William, Dungeons and 20s. William described hell so viscerally to me that it actually almost made me rethink real life religion. It was horrifying. I was impressed. I learned a thing or two in that session about how to describe what hell is like. It was wild. You should go back and watch the episode if you want to hear it. But anyway, so there's the story. That's what happened with Grom. Sketchosaurus Rex says both either. Nice. Okay. All right. I hear you. Drew and Dragon says ability to never take fall damage, basically, since you can ladder yourself down, turning it off and on while riding it like a broomstick. True. Whispering Wisp says, I mean, be an Eldritch Knight and it's literally like Mjolnir. True. Garrick says, we're just sizing up how healthy and energetic you seem. Topic is secondary. Well, thank you. That's very polite of you. I would say my energy levels are at 75%. 75. Sketchosaurus Rex says, Wizards of the Coast has orcs as just another humanoid. Paizo has goblins like a common playable race now. Kobold Press loves kobolds as something players should play. I treat them all as monsters that are evil. Justin Sloan says, I think an entire fantasy population being singularly evil or good limits a lot of interesting storytelling. It also limits the player's options when it comes to character creation. Okay, so here's what I think about this. I think that this really depends on your world state. And I think that's where the imagination comes in. I don't necessarily, and I never have necessarily, always loved the trope that like orcs had to be evil or goblins had to be evil. I understand, like, for example, I played in Greyhawk setting, and while I'm no lore master, I know enough about the Greyhawk setting to know that as a general rule, like the gods in that pantheon and then the orcs and the goblins, they're mostly considered, like, the goblins are considered evil, orcs are generally evil. So this is the lore of that world, right? And I played according to that lore when I played in that world. With that being said, I created some new lore for the races when I created my homebrew world, and I like that, and I think that that's cool. And I think that it's fun when people do new things with the lore. For example, in my homebrew world, this wasn't even in my homebrew world. This was in Greyhawk. I invented this race of elves called snow elves, and they were like they lived literally in the Arctic, and they had white skin, and they like blended in with the snow, and they used echolocation, kind of like bats. They would like click their tongues to like locate prey so that like they could hunt in the dark without being seen. And they were very terrifying, very evil. They would basically catch their enemies, take all their stuff and eat them. They were like cannibals. They were terrible. They were like straight up savages, but they were elves. Why make them elves? I just wanted to. I just thought they were cool. Regular like highborn elves, do they like the snow elves? No. No. They think they're backwoods savages, but they're dangerous. So I think that it's fun to get creative with those things. And I don't like sticking too closely to the tropes. I think it's fun to mix and match them. based on your world state. And I admire when I come into a world and someone describes a race in a new way or a species in a new way. Like I played in a campaign one time where their evil race were the dwarves. The dwarves were just this menacing, awful race. They were basically like this oppressive, tyrannical race. They had most of the power and they would come in and smash everything and take everything. And even the orcs and goblins were basically victims to the dwarves. And so that was a fun thing. I've played in settings like that. That was a fun thing. Let's see here. Going to catch up on some of these comments. Waz says, morning all, hardest session emotionally. Grom going down and Cub and Tarnik letting it all go. Yes, that was pretty emotional. You know, okay, I didn't finish my story about Grom, unfortunately. So Grom went to hell for a minute, right? But then, man, this is what makes it hard for me to play evil characters. Grom went to hell because he is evil and he's motivated only by gold. That's all that motivates him. And there's this elf, basically this innocent elf in the party who doesn't know any better. And she prayed to her god and basically asked to switch places with Grom. Like she would forfeit her soul to save Grom because she did not know any better. And she didn't know who Grom really was. She had barely known him. Grom kept her at arm's length because Grom keeps everyone at arm's length. And he never lets anyone see the real him. The only person in the whole party who maybe actually saw the real Grom was Tarnik, Waz's character, because Grom saw in Tarnik that there was kind of the same bent for evil, but is a different variety. And Grom gave Tarnik a wide berth because Tarnik was a paladin, very lawful. And Grom was a little more manipulative, a little sneaky, a little snaky. And so he had to be really careful not to be that way around Tarnik because he knew, like, the type of character Tarnik was, upfront, paladin, says what they mean what they say. Those kind of characters are the most dangerous to Grom, and they're the ones he understands the least because he doesn't know. He literally cannot comprehend what it's like to say the truth and to mean it and to stand on it. His whole life is built on building up these like illusions of what he wants people to think of him, which is very hard for me to roleplay. But anyway, this elf, she basically asked her god to trade places with him, and the gods granted it. And they told Grom this. And me as a player, I knew this was so wrong. She should not give her soul to save Grom because she doesn't know what an evil bastard he is. She's just innocent, but Grom is evil, and he smelled opportunity in the air. He smelled a way out, selfishly, of course, as always, but he chose it, and then he was brought back. Now, what is Grom going to do? The god warned him, the god who told him about this, warned him, you need to change or you're going to go back to hell when you die. It's not going to change anything. You're still going to die. You're still going to go to hell someday. And so Grom, but then Grom was like, what do you mean? And they're like, all you care about is gold. You don't care about what really matters. But here's the thing. I realized that Grom would have no concept of what that even means. And so he basically came out of that vision kind of screaming like, what do you mean? Change how? Like he is so lost in his quest for gold and his selfish quest for riches that he can't even see that he doesn't understand how he's evil. And so there's going to be quite a bit of character development there. But anyway, shabam. All right, so let's get back to some of these comments here. Dave's Imagination says, latest I heard is that when Monster Manual doesn't even have orcs. Oh, the new Monster Manual doesn't even have orcs? That's interesting. Maybe they've become a completely playable species. Maybe they're not even a monstrous species anymore. Sketchosaurus Rex says, limitations breed creativity. Also makes a drastic difference when you're the one good drow, like Drizzt. Yeah, I agree. I think it's cool. I think it's sad for people to be pigeonholing orcs as this good species. It's almost like whitewashing them. Like, why do you want to whitewash the orcs? It's like that, most of their lore throughout the Dungeons and Dragons lore, They've been the kind of like the outsiders. They've kind of been the downtrodden. The whole thing with Gruumsh was that the gods slighted him and they basically left him no land to claim for his people, the god Gruumsh. And that's the orcs came, he stabbed his spear into the ground and caused like the rift, and he's like, that's where my people will go, and because you slighted me, we're going to make war and we're going to conquer everything. And that was like a founding principle of the orcs, according to, at least I think it was the Faerun lore in D&D. Don't quote me on that, I'm not a lore master, it's just I'm just reading a little D&D wiki here. Okay, don't come at me with pitchforks if I got it a little wrong. But like, I think it's sad that that isn't being honored a little bit more. I do think that's a little sad. I think that it's cool to play like orcs, or like another one are the drow. The drow are cool to play. They used to be cooler to play because they were so rare, and it was so rare to see a good one. And it was usually when you saw a drow, it was like, this is bad news. This is a bad creature. Where that one is, there's probably a whole army of them coming. We should kill it. It's probably a spy. That's what made playing a drow very challenging. That's what made playing an orc very challenging. And I think that that's getting a little bit washed out. And I don't know why. I don't know why people are doing that. It's like, why would Wizards of the Coast do that? Why would they care about the orcs? It's very strange. I will admit that I feel like it's taking some weird directions. I don't really care. People are going to play what they want to play. People are going to run the world they want to run. If you want to run orcs a certain way, you're going to run them that way in your world state. And so, I mean, I guess I kind of feel like it doesn't really matter what Wizards of the Coast is doing. When it really comes down to it, game masters are going to mostly homebrew their own stuff. Garrick says, by the way, I did a post-mortem on that ancient industrial site I gave up on, figured out what my prob was, and now hope to finish it. Oh yeah, heck yeah, that's awesome. Robert Evans says, in my opinion, you can do whatever you want at the table you share. You don't try and force others to do what you think is right. Share your opinion for sure, but if the table isn't for you, walk away. Yeah, no, that's super true. It's also true that I think it's really cool for game masters to do cool, interesting new things. Like, I think that if you're a game master and you think to yourself, I want to run orcs like a tropical rainforest tribe. That's what orcs are going to be in my world. Okay, that's cool. I'll play in that game. I don't care. But here's the problem though, is if I run orcs as this, this fearsome race of these, monstrous humanoids who are just hell-bent on domination and oppressing their enemies and just winning everything and stealing the gold. And then people are like, dude, you can't play orcs like that. That's like, I don't know, it's inappropriate, or that's not fair to the orcs. It's like, this is what I start to have a problem with. I'm not going to try to join someone else's game where they have orcs being like, orcs look like happy-go-lucky people in the new Wizards of the Coast stuff. If someone's running orcs that way, okay, that's cool. I will play in that game. I'm not going to criticize the GM for that. Basically, I guess what I'm saying is it's rude to criticize the GM for how they're running the orcs. Play the game that the GM has laid out. Create the story of your character. Stop complaining. I guess I feel like that's my policy as a player. But as a game master, I want to make it really cool. I want to make it epic. I want to create cool story things so people can create those stories for their characters. Anyway, let's see here. Iskandar the Great says, ruling a species as just evil or not is like any other storytelling decision. You can use it to tell interesting stories because once you make the choice, it should have consequences for the world. Yes, I agree. It does have consequences, and it'll play out, hopefully, in an interesting way. As long as it plays out in an interesting way, I don't really care that much. In fact, I have a lot more issue with the criticizing of how GMs choose to set it up. Wizards of the Coast choosing to make orcs different, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter that much to me. I do think that orcs were cool before, and I think that paying homage to that warrior legacy is cool. Maybe that's just me being nostalgic. I'm not mad that they made orcs just more like humans in the new edition. And if game masters run them that way, I will happily play that way. But what I have a problem with, I guess, is players trying to judge their game master for running orcs a certain kind of way. That's what I'm saying. That's the beginning and end of my point. I want the game master to create a cool world, and then I want the players to support that. Okay, so Robert H says, I think people find it hard to utilize alignment for characters as well as enemies. That's a very interesting thing to bring up, because a lot of people try to assign alignment. And I think everyone knows this. This is the problem with alignment. People try to assign alignment, but then they play their character based on alignment. What you really have to do is figure out what's going on with your character. What are they doing? Like, what do they do? What choices do they make? What are their values? And that will determine actually what their alignment is. Alignment is always the last thing I create about any character, because I don't know what their alignment is until I figure out their value system. Once I decide their value system, the alignment will emerge as a natural byproduct. But if you try to slap alignment on at the beginning of it and then fit their values into the alignment, I think it gets wonky, and I think it loses immersion. That's what I think. I think it gets less immersive. I think it gets less believable. Iskandar the Great says, I sincerely think alignment is misunderstood. I agree. You're probably meaning what I just described. If not, I would love to hear what you mean instead. Garrick says, me 3. Robert H says, agreed. Mr. Vincent says, the game needs antagonists. Are the BEG only liches? This raises a good question. What are the best antagonists? So in my campaign, I'm getting ready to run on Tuesdays, the Barren Lands. One of the primary antagonists is going to be the climate. They're facing a brutal, desolate, barren Arctic wilderness. That's going to be a massive antagonist. But what are some other antagonists in my Haunting at Ashboro campaign? Speaking of that, Rogue Lady's in the house. Hey, Rogue Lady, how's it going? Rogue Lady is now publishing Friday nights, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on the GM Philosophy channel. If you did not catch her last video she published last Friday, go back and watch that. Awesome. It was about basically character-specific magic weapons that level up as you go. It was awesome. So how's it going, Rogue Lady? Good to see you. But she's also playing in my Haunting at Ashboro campaign, which we will eventually finish within the next 2 years, I'm sure. It's hard to get everyone together, and I do not want to skip any players. Like, I want every player in every session for that one, so we have to skip quite a lot. But here's the thing. In that campaign, it's a demon is a bad guy, big bad EG. I think that dragons make awesome BBEGs, but you know what? The big bad could be a human. The big bad could be an elf. The big bad could be a beholder. I think big bads kind of need to be sophisticated to a point. They need to be pretty menacing. They need to be pretty dangerous. Anything could make a big bad. I actually love the idea of creating unique and interesting bad guys out of maybe character arcs or character types that maybe other people wouldn't create big bads with. And I don't think there's any best creature to have. I think it would be a shame if there was never another dragon big bad, because dragons are such an epic big bad. Liches are epic. They are. I think that humanoids make some of the best big bads, like a really awesome wizard, or a mighty barbarian, the strongest barbarian. But I think that you can make almost anything a big bad. You could make an organization a big bad, and then their leader kind of is like the big bad. I think that, so to Mr. Vincent's point, no, not only liches, I think anything can be. And then there's also the question of like, a lot of this, what Wizards of the Coast is really doing? They're going to force us to have a very specific conversation about defining evil. What is evil and what is good? And do these terms matter as much as do they matter as much as they seem to when we put those labels on characters? This is a very good conversation to have. I would encourage everyone to have this conversation regularly in their lives. What does it mean to actually be good? What does it mean to actually be evil? It's a surprisingly difficult thing to define, like in an objective way. I would love to hear what you guys think about that. Dave says Strahd is a great BBG. I haven't played the Strahd campaign, but I've heard awesome things about it. Rogue Lady says it's been a fantastic campaign so far. I'm assuming she means Haunting at Ashboro. Heck yeah. Let's see here. Sketch Source Rex says, I like playing half-orcs as characters like Blade or D. They're feared, cursed by their monstrous blood coursing through them. Feared for the power that makes them great. I also love playing characters like, that's awesome. I love playing flawed characters. I mean, to me, sometimes it's fun. I think it's almost fun in a meta sense to play a playable species or even a non-playable species that isn't played very much. I tend to find myself preferring to play characters of species that I don't see played very often. Once I see a bunch of people are playing a certain species, it gets less cool to me. I'm less interested in playing it. I'm playing a Minotaur partly because I just thought, I have not seen anyone play Minotaur in such a long time. I want to play Minotaur. It's not just because I'm trying to be a hipster though. I do love that race. Like Minotaurs are so cool, I think. But there is an element of like, what are people not playing right now? That's kind of what I want to play. That's me personally. I'm not saying that that's what everyone should do. This is me personally. Rogue Lady says, got liquid metal aliens for my big bads in my main campaign. Liquid metal aliens. Interesting. Is it a sci-fi or is it a fantasy thing? I think I remember you saying your campaign was sort of sci-fi-ish. That's so interesting. Liquid metal. If they get hit, do they like explode and then come back together? That would be very bad. Very bad. Magnets. Magnets is how to defeat them, but they're probably non-magnetic. Garrick says, I've got gods, a demon lord, and a major empire irritated at my party. Yep, it sounds like a typical adventure. Garrick says, not irritated enough to make squishing them a priority. I guess for an empire to make an adventuring group a priority, they have to be pretty irritating. Robert says, when I think of alignment in the game, I mostly agree with GMP. I tend to think of alignment as ever-changing and hardly ever set for characters or NPCs or enemies. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Robert. And in fact, I think in 3rd edition, that was one of the issues. They made alignment such a big deal that if you went out of alignment, according to the GM, you would lose ability sometimes. Like, for example, if you were a paladin and you lost, like if you stepped out of lawful alignment, you would lose your paladin abilities. And so alignment was such a crucial thing in 3rd edition, and I kind of feel like it was a little misguided. I think it should have been based on some kind of value system. And alignment is not a value system. Alignment is just a measure of how your values equate to your actions, and then the perception of those actions on kind of like a chaos law scale, and maybe a good evil scale if you want to get really ambitious about it. If you want to be a real ambitious philosophical person, you can even rank it like that. But to be honest, while it's a fun metric to talk about, it should be the final thing that goes on a character. Jason says, what did I miss? Jason, we're talking about Grom's trip to hell and back, that he's an evil bastard. We're talking about how orcs have gotten weird as per Wizards of the Coast. They're kind of seeming to try to humanize them, taking away their warrior dominating culture. And then we were talking about BBEGs and what kinds of characters make the best ones, or what kinds of, I say, species, what types of creatures should be the big bads now that everything is becoming humanized. Let's see here. Robert Evans says, I like to play with point of view in games I share with the table. When you do this, it can create mind-blowing endings. When you say point of view, do you mean like changing the point of view of like they see it from the bad guy's perspective and then from the good guy's perspective and so on? Or do you mean like different, just like the player characters, different points of view? Mr. Vincent says yes, BBG Orc, like Hobbit movie trilogy. Yeah, heck yeah. Um, you know, here's the thing about the Hobbit movies. And I loved Lord of the Rings. I love those movies. Nearly timeless, perfect movies. But the Hobbit movies were a little strange. I liked them. There were some funny things and fun things in them, but I almost had to not think of them as Tolkien. I almost had to think of them as just fantasy movies because there was so much zany stuff. The zaniness almost ruined those movies for me, and I kind of have to think of them not as Tolkien movies. Come at me with pitchforks if you want. A lot of people are really mad at me when I talk about that. My wife is a massive Tolkien fan and she loves the Hobbit movies. They're some of her favorite movies and she gets so angry at me when I say that. But it's the truth. That's just how I feel, man. That's how I feel. Sketchsaur Rex says, I like having kingdoms of elves or dwarves be an elitist antagonist. Liches, dragons, and mad wizards are my usual big bads. Sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, sounds pretty awesome. Rogue Lady says mostly fantasy, but like right on the edge of a Magitech revolution. Rogue Lady, do you like Arcane, like the League of Legends show, Arcane? I love that show so much. Sketchosaurus Rex said half my characters are human fighters, because no one really plays that around me. Oh, gotcha. Nice. Okay. So it sounds like you go back to kind of plain Jane, like human fighter. It's kind of like a plain Jane character. Robert Evans says Rex is speaking the truth. I believe it. Rogue Lady says the liquid metal guys were inside a meteor that hit the planet and they are pretty much immune to everything but very specific magic and dragon's fire. Hence the BBG hunting the dragons to extinction. Oh, interesting. The dragons are the hunted. That's kind of wild and fun. Speaking of dragons, you know what books were awesome? The Aragon books. Do you know what they did very badly? The Aragon movie. It was terrible. Terrible. And I love those books so much. I still haven't read the newest one, though. The one that came out recently. Sketchosaurus Rex says alignment is your core values, your gut check. The background stuff in 5e fleshes it out pretty well. It does. It does. Dave's imagination says the barbarian got a mace that turned him evil. The rest of the party had to gang tackle the barbarian to get it away so he wouldn't be evil. Future topic. How do you handle PvP? That is a good future topic. That's a super good future topic. Mr. Vincent says, agreed about Hobbit film, but that orc army was brutal. They were great movies. I have to not think of them as the Hobbit book. I just have to think of them as their own thing. Whispering Wisp said, sometimes I do wonder what stories you can't tell with just a human with a different cultural background. All the other playable species feel just like set dressing sometimes. Do you really feel that way? Like I feel like there's so much wealth of interesting variety to be had in even slightly different species traits. Like for example, think of how much different it is to grow up as an elf than a human. Imagine looking at the prospect of living 800 years while humans are living 100 years. Like that in itself, and then the culture that would come from that. It would be so different. And then look at like being a tiefling. Imagine that, having that infernal lineage and then just being basically hated and looked down on and feared everywhere you go, and how that would inform your upbringing. I just think that, to me, changing species is such a wild and fun way to change what kind of character you play, because it would inform it so much to me. To me, it makes such a big difference. Robert Evans says, GMP, the game is generally from a hero's point of view. What I like to do is run a campaign as normal, but the party's painted as BBEG in the public eye. Oh, I like that. No, I see what you're saying. No, that's really cool. Rogue Lady says, oh yeah, Arcane is like exactly a type of world in my story, but slightly less powerful tech. Okay, gotcha. Sketchosaurus Rex says, Alan, I disagree. Where the game has magical planes of long chaos, good and evil, it makes sense to have alignment and spells that can affect you based off it. Robert Evans says, why are there ads in Alive? Because we gotta pay the bills. Because we gotta pay the bills. Alex Abel says, what's up, man? It's good to see you live. Hey, Alex, great to see you as well. The Rogue Lady says, or growing up like Shiori as a human in an elf monastery. Yeah. I think that changing species changes so much about what a character could be, and like the background and just all the thinking around that character. Whispering Wisp says, but the history isn't the story. It's just the background. Yeah, no, you're right. But it's like background informs so much of who a person is and how they see the world, what their expectations are, their value system. Like it affects so much. Like for example, when I play Grom, the Minotaur, lawful evil bard Minotaur, like he grew up in this warrior culture of Minotaurs, but like he there are some things that are so lost on him. For example, he's actually really charismatic, but he even on him subtle things like being nice genuinely versus faking being nice. Grom does not understand the difference between these things. Why? Because in my mind, when I think about his culture, he came up in this warrior Minotaur culture. There was no such thing as like a niche down distinction of different categories of nice. You either kill enemy or you're nice to friend, and is that simple. So Grom is actually really deeply sophisticated for being a Minotaur, but he has his limits, right? So it's like for him, playing nice and actually manipulating them is still being nice. And when people would be mad at him for doing that, he literally cannot comprehend why they would be mad. And so it's this weird personality blocker that he has that makes him sort of incompatible in some ways with a lot of other humanoids. That's just like my interpretation of him. That's just one example. Because I see the Minotaurs as being like, I guess I see them as not being, I see them as being very bestial. I see them as not being very like charismatically intuitive. They're way more bestial, way more like smash with club, gore with horns than talk through it with words kind of creatures. And so that warrior culture, plus they have short lifespans actually. Excuse me. They have actually relatively short lifespans. They only live like 60 years. So it's not like they have like hundreds of years to figure it out, you know. Sorry, coughing. Sketchosaurus Rex says, humans aren't boring. You can be vastly different as a fighter from trident and net, sword and shield, axe and hammer, bow, spear, shield, knives, fists, etc. It's super true. Humans are not boring at all. In fact, the vast majority of characters I have played have been humans because I think they're so much fun. Alex Abel says, I super agree with you. However, the way people roleplay those races aren't consistent. Most people who play elves don't really roleplay them. They tend to just play humans with pointy ears. So that may be true. You know, there's a lot to be said about the skill of roleplay, too. That is a skill. There are definitely players who are more skilled at roleplay than others. There's no doubt about that. I consider myself a very deep role player, deep and immersive role player. Sketchosaurus Rex says Alex 100. It's the exact same with alignment. Alan Gramont says Sketchosaurus Rex, right? When do you break your alignment? I could probably argue anything I do as CG or CE. Sketchosaurus Rex says I really like your Minotaur. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. So anyway, with that being said, I think I'm going to wrap that up for the day. Thank you all for hanging out with me on Casual Monday. I think we're back at it, feeling good enough that I'm actually getting through a day of work. So far, so good. And I will see all of you on tomorrow morning's video and on tomorrow afternoon's live. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Roll a few D100s for me at your next games, and I will see you all on the next